Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Smith, and you are listening to The Wayward Wanderer. Welcome, everyone. Joining me today are representatives of the Heathen Kindred based out in Montana. If y'all could please introduce yourselves with like a little info on how long you've been practicing and anything else that you think is relevant.
Yeah, my name is Logan Nickel. I am the speaker of the Heathen Kindred. I've been practicing, I suppose since childhood, really. I mean, it's kind of like everybody's been practicing since the very beginning and they didn't know it. I guess I started calling myself a pagan in my early 20s. And I'm 32 now. So been practicing for, I guess, roughly 10 years consciously, but very interested in mysticism and shamanism and all of that stuff for, most of my life. And I, joined the Hell's Gate Heathen Kindred, very early on, and it, took me a while to find a good place to do group practice. You know, I was a solo practitioner for a long time, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
My name is River Shannon Aloya, and I am a second generation heathen, so lifelong. I have been a member of Hell's Gate Heathen Kindred since its founding, basically. I have been involved in various other pagan groups, including the Fort Hood Open Circle, Military Pagan Network, the Powers group in Montana, and then eventually the Opus Ima Obscure group, also here in Montana. I have been the vulva of the Heathen Kindred for about 3 years now, and before that I was elected chieftain for 3 years, and that's about it.
Hi, my name's Cloudy. I've been a part of the Kindred since its origins too. It kind of started in a little bit of a funny way, but here we are now. I've been like a practicing animist for my whole life. I think everybody has a little bit of that, to be honest. But I didn't actually start practicing heathenry until around 26 or 27, and right along the time that our group began. And yeah, I do a lot of art and a lot of organizing any of our more artistic ventures within our group. I've been a council member, and yep.
How would you all describe the Hell's Gate Heathen Kindred for folks who are not as familiar with, like, say, pagan organizations or particularly heathen ones and some of like the names and terms that come up?
I would describe us as a Celto-Norse neo-heathen community. We chose Celto-Norse neo-heathenry as a blanket kind of focus for the group, although many of our members don't follow that individually. They follow whatever pagan practice they choose to. It's just that our group practice has a focus on neo-paganism, particularly Celtic and Norse.
I'd say another important tenet of our group is that we function in a very egalitarian manner. It was actually like in our early codes to function in a very egalitarian way. I believe one of the things that separates us from a lot of other groups is the fact that we have all of our officials elected in. We have no direct leadership roles, and all people are seen as equal. And I believe that is one of our, like, beyond just the religious connotations, that is one of our core tenets. It's one of the things that separates us from other groups. And our name, the Hell's Gate Heathen Kindred, there is a location here in Missoula called the Hell's Gate, and it is actually called that because of a massacre that had happened there of Native Americans. And we had chose that name to also honor and remember what had happened to the people who had like lived in our location before, so we could honor like their memory.
What were some of your reasons for choosing a more egalitarian structure? Especially since particularly for listeners who may not be as familiar, or maybe they're coming out of, say, a more Christian background, there are a lot of pagan groups that tend to have a very clear, like, hierarchy of these are like high priest and high priestess, or like Gothi or whatever. What were your reasons for going in that direction?
All right. If nobody else is going to talk, I guess I will. Our main reason for going in that direction is because some of us had really, really awful experiences in the past with different groups. We had seen, how, absolute power kind of absolutely corrupts. And we didn't want that for ourselves. We wanted things to be more about community than about, creating a cult. And we really felt strongly that it was a way to avoid certain pitfalls where certain people are, given, kind of too much importance. And then, when we first started, we actually had a chieftain role who was kind of a decision maker for everything, but only until we got large enough. And it was always agreed upon that the chieftain would have to step down at a certain point when we got large enough to actually install a council. And the reason for that is we noticed like right away that like new people coming into our group would gravitate towards the chieftain and like try to fawn on the chieftain and, try to curry favor. And it was a way to completely avoid nepotism and avoid certain types of keeping things from being all about one person's point of view or one person's vision, and instead truly focusing on community.
I'd say another reason for our egalitarian structure came out of a few of us having kind of like communal ideals from having been parts of intentional communities. Unfortunately, many failed intentional communities because there wasn't too much of a like aligned goal in mind with some of those communities. But the concept of like an egalitarian structure was what had called quite a few of us to those communities. So I think it was just a way to enact the sense of community, even if we didn't have the land and everything else that intentional communities have. It was a way to honor like our desire to be a part of that type of community and work towards building that. That is something that we still are working towards, is eventually having land and an intentional community in place. But, it's grassroots. We got to start where we can and work our way up.
How long has Hell's Gate Kindred been active, and how many members would you say the group has?
I believe we started in 2007, if I'm correct. Could be wrong. And currently we have about 50 active members, but we have many more kind of fringe members as well, numbering into the few hundreds. So, Julie, if you can check on that date, I don't exactly remember when we were founded. It's been a while.
With that dynamic you mentioned of there's active and less active members, is that something that's presented any particular challenges as things have been, growing and moving?
I think that having more active members is something that happens kind of organically. People tend to come in and put in, a bit of effort and then maybe back off a little bit, or they may come in full bore and give it their all, 100% from the very beginning. And so it kind of just depends on who they are and what kind of personality they have or how committed they are to something like this. Sometimes there's life changes, or they find that they don't get along with certain members of the group, and so they take a step back. It's always been an organic shifting thing with membership. It's never been really super static. There's always been a core group of people, about, 20 people have always been like always there. But, there is a little bit of satellite, people bring people and they're like, oh, I've been to this thing a couple times and I don't know, maybe I would go to some more things, but I just don't know if this is right for me. Other people, they instantaneously find that they want to be deeply involved in our community and they're there, 100% of the time. So it just really kind of depends on individuals.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you all had to overcome when you were getting started?
I could definitely attest to this one. Some of our biggest challenge, some of the early biggest challenges was separating ourselves from people believing that we were just like a party for people to come and just like drink mead and get hammered and party it out. And then once we had kind of started to get that structure fixed, and move away from all of these folks who had just kind of started to attend strictly because there was free mead and they thought they could come in and party. The next issue was creating a functional mediation process. And we have worked and worked and worked on our mediation process, and it's over the years become a rather effective process for mediation. But it definitely had its trials and errors early on. Also, side note here, I double checked, and we officially formed in 2014, but we had already been having events and whatnot since 2012.
Could you all elaborate more on your mediation process and how it's developed over time?
Well, it started out just us having an issue and trying to figure out what we needed to do about it. And so we all met up and discussed this person is having an issue with this person, et cetera, et cetera. And we realized that this was going to be a thing that was going to continue happening, of course, because whenever you get a group of people together, there's bound to be problems. There's bound to be miscommunications and challenges and differences of opinion. And so we started trying to actually formalize the process so that people feel a little more comfortable with it, so that it's not just somebody sitting in a room with a bunch of people around them being mad at them. And one thing we added is there's always the option to have an advocate, somebody who is outside of the situation, who is always on your side and representing you. And as time has gone on, we've figured out more about like, okay, well, for example, we need to make sure that any sort of potential resolution is fair to both parties. We need to make sure that things are kept private. You know, a lot of times these issues are very personal for people, and so we don't want to go spreading everybody's dirty laundry around. So there's just been a lot of little things where as time has gone on, we've certainly done it the wrong way a number of times. And from that have learned how to do it a better way. And it's still developing. And I think it's going to continue to develop, probably in perpetuity. Perpetuity.
What are some of the more effective ways you all have found for getting people engaged in the community and also in activities that help build the community?
Well, certainly having an abundance of events and a variety of events is helpful. We have our study groups, which are great for the nerdy people. We have our crafting things, which are great for the artsy people. And we do a lot more than just the holidays. And I feel like that is an essential part of what keeps us together, because there are a lot of other groups where they just celebrate the holidays and that's when they meet up and that's it. But we also have our regular meetings where we get together and we talk about things and all kinds of events. So I think having a variety of events and having it be such that you almost couldn't attend everything. I mean, the three of us like try to attend everything and it's almost not possible. And that's kind of cool because then it gives people options, and then there's smaller events and larger events. So people have the option to not only pick which events they want to go to, but pick based on their preferences and based on their comfort level too. Some people are more comfortable in big groups. Some people are more comfortable in small groups. And also like having get-togethers that aren't really official. Just like, okay, hey, we're all gonna hang out and play an RPG, together. That, just spending time together, even outside of the kindred itself, is really an essential part of why we're so close. Because a lot of groups are not as close as we are, and I've heard from a lot of people in other groups like, "Wow, you guys are like, you know, if somebody needs help moving, we have a joke. We are straight to hell moving company," because it's like every time in the last several years that somebody has needed help moving, there have been at least 3 or 4 of us there, if not much more. And so we have a little group chat that is all of like kind of the more involved members, and people will just hit that up and be like, "Hey, I need a ride to work today. Hey, I need this. Hey, I need that." And I've heard people from other groups be like, "Whoa, you guys do that?"
I think that one of the things that makes our membership more involved is that we base our group upon a community focus versus a religious focus. the religious aspect was there from the very beginning, and it was kind of what drew us all together in the very, very start. But we all had a desire for something a lot bigger than just going to church, or having that type of experience. We wanted to be able to, call upon people and as well as our gods, the people that are here in our lives, and have real good, long lasting interactions that were going to last a lifetime. We all came from, well, not all of us, but a lot of us came from really broken situations. And a lot of us really were striving hard to have a sense of family, inclusion, purpose. And the Kindred has given a lot of us all three of those things. I definitely didn't feel comfortable coming out as intersex. And the acceptance of the community allowed me to have the strength and the comfort to come out to the rest of the world as intersex. I'm an intersex human being, and for a long time I lived with a lot of shame about that and a lot of secrecy about that. But because I had found such a strong community of acceptance, I knew I finally had enough support in my life that I would be able to come out and not feel alienated or isolated. I feel that that's also true for other community members as well.
Well, and one thing we always say is that we are a community first and a spiritual group second. And so, like River was saying, that is our focus is the community. And that's part of the reason why we're not like exclusively Norse heathen. We have Celtic holidays because we have members who were like, hey, I worship the Celtic gods. We had enough people that were saying that we were like, okay, well, we don't have to be married to just this one culture. We're all kind of mutts anyway. And with the community thing too, nope, I just brain pooped. Edit. That's all I got.
So we've for a long time now, have never been exclusive as far as like you have to practice Norse heathenry or you have to practice paganism. Or our style of it. In fact, like we very much welcome and like even ask other members who are Native American, or we've had someone who had Egyptian mysticism, quite a few different types of mysticism and paganism or spiritual beliefs join and like perform those rituals and perform, Native American ceremony during our events. We were never trying to like box ourselves into being specifically and only a religious group. The concept of kindred came very much from the idea of providing like a healthy familial network for one another. Many of us didn't have that, and it really has become like this creature with a life of its own. We didn't see all of this coming. It's become something that's just been this like amazing and beautiful experience for so many of us to have this ability to call on others when you need help, or to know when to provide support and help to others that are within our group. And that's definitely like what really draws a lot of people to our community once they see that. That is, I think, ultimately one of the things that separates our groups from others.
Totally. And I think also just like, Norse society was animistic. All of these ancient societies that we are trying to gain their wisdom and bring it into the modern world from were animists. And that doesn't just mean talking to spirits. It doesn't just mean like believing that that mountain is a being with a personality. It's also about relationship with other people. And that is something that we have taken very, very seriously, is that our being a community organization, being there for each other, developing these bonds is part of our spiritual practice.
What are some of the biggest day-to-day challenges that you all have seen come up? 'Cause I know folks think of the more like, the big stuff when they think of things like, community building and organizing, and not as much some of the little things. So what are some of those that just things that have to get worked through and sorted?
People. Like you get a group of people together and there's going to be problems, there's going to be conflicts. And I think anybody that has been in any of these types of groups just knows that because they've seen it. And when you're really trying to focus on building something that's going to last beyond you, when you're really trying to put all of your efforts together into something that really matters and to something that is potentially going to part of the solution to the trials that we're facing as people, there's a certain amount of mediation that you have to do. There's a certain amount of getting people to chat with each other and to work things out that you have to do. And sometimes there's a certain point where you have to say, sorry, but you are no longer part of the solution. And so something that we've struggled with since the very beginning is having people involved who are causing more problems than they're solving, and it sucks because you care about people and you want to provide a space, which we try very hard to do, to be, we have an open door. We invite everybody in, but man, you just gotta be on track with us if you want to stick around. And I think that's our biggest daily problem. We spend too much time working, trying to solve disputes and stuff like that. And we don't want to be focused on that. We want to be focused on moving forward. So I think more often than not, the day-to-day challenges are just being like, okay, well, maybe you should talk to this person, and like, maybe you guys need to put your big boy pants on and like, be adults about things. And we have to do a little bit of that. But I think A, due to our mediation process, and B, the fact that so many of us are just like ravenous about this group and about this project and about the goals that we want to complete, really helps us work through a lot of that stuff and mitigate some of those problems. So, every group has drama. I feel like we're pretty good as far as like drama goes. We're fairly low drama compared to other groups that I've been involved in or seen.
I think some of the challenges that I've noticed are sometimes keeping the group focused, especially when we're having like meetings and things like that. It's oftentimes we have a lot of, opinions and a lot of different, ideas, and, not bad ones. It's just that, sometimes if you add too many ingredients into a soup, it becomes inedible, so you have to like keep things, this is onion and potato and, beef, and that's it. That's all we do. We only do these things, and those things, matter. That's our group focus. And so keeping, our group focused on that group focus can sometimes be a big challenge. Oftentimes organization can be a challenge. Picking tasks that need to be done and knowing what tasks need to be done can be challenging. And so we oftentimes utilize group chats to get done a lot of stuff, a lot of polls about like when we can meet up or who's going to be, bringing what, or, things like that have been helpful. And we didn't start out that way. We started out just like verbally communicating, and then like somebody would forget something, and, and there wasn't like a group chat to be like, hey, did so-and-so remember this? They're good at forgetting, and then funds were a big problem in the beginning. There was like a few people, like 4 or 5 people funding everything. And we're talking like spending hundreds of dollars per event. And that's like, 4 or 5 events a year. And it got to be real taxing on those like 4 or 5 people. And so learning how to fundraise and how to gain, Patreon, people, and how to like spread out that, money coming in. Cause like some people are on fixed incomes. They can't commit to like bringing in money like every single month, but they have other skills, that can bring in money, and they do contribute financially, and spreading that burden out made it a lot easier to do as well. And then
follow us on Patreon.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/HellsGateHeathen.
Yes. And then I think the last like day-to-day thing that we have sometimes found difficult to deal with was problem people. There are certain people who just really tend to take from a situation and not really ever give, or people are just never in there's some people that are never ever going to be positive no matter what. They always are seeking out the negative about everything, and how we dealt with, making our environment uncomfortable enough for most of those people to want to leave was challenging.
Well, part of that too is that when we first started, it was kind of a party thing with a Viking flavor, and there were a number of us early on that were interested in getting a little more serious, practicing the spirituality a little bit more. And when we started shifting in that direction, there were quite a few people that were not interested and that left. Because they weren't here for that. So, cultivating the environment, to be what the majority of us really want it to be and to make it something meaningful has been a very important part of the solution to the problem of having people around whose goals don't align with ours.
Are there any closing thoughts or anything that y'all would like to share for anyone who is doing heathen and pagan organizing, whether they're just starting out or they've been at it for a while or anything in between?
I definitely think the community focus is like the most important part of it. Is that what you were going to say, Cloudy?
Yeah. I was also going to point out that to stick with it, we have definitely had our ups and downs. There has been times where there was just a few of, we have a member that makes a joke about the same 5 people. Like there's been times where it was just the same 5 people, even though we would have events with 20 plus people, it'd always be the same 5, just really pushing to make it happen. And I will say, having been here from the start and watching a lot of our members, our founding members, fall off, the one thing I could say to others who want to start something like this is it's a big commitment, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of pushing and a lot of tears, honestly, to stick with it and to get to this point. But it's worth it. It really is, truly.
Yeah. And like part of that too is I don't think that this is doable without a certain degree of emotional support for each other. Like you kind of have to be a little vulnerable. You kind of have to be willing to admit that you can't do it all on your own. You have to be willing to say, hey guys, I'm at my breaking point right now. Please, somebody else take this burden from me or that burden from me for now or forever, and it's, I mean, personally, that's something that I've learned is like, I was, and you guys, the two of you can relate to this a lot too, I know. And many other members of our community can, like all of us at some point have taken too much on because you care about it so much and you want it to be successful so badly. And the only, like, you will burn out. It's like almost inevitable, that you'll burn out at some point. But the way that you come back from that burnout is having the emotional support, having the people who are going to say like, man, I love what you contribute to this. And hey, why don't I take you out for dinner or something? Or, like our care for each other is an essential part of what makes this happen. And in order to have that level of care and compassion and deep friendship with each other, you have to be vulnerable and you have to realize that this is not all just business. Like this is very deeply spiritual, very deeply personal. And there's really, in my opinion, I've never seen a group that went into it strictly business-like be successful, and certainly not be successful in the way that our group has. So I really think those close bonds with each other are the most important and potentially an essential part of making something like this work long term.
Well, and on that thought, there's like kind of a newer aspect. Well, it's not really newer. But one of the aspects of our community has also been, like with our fundraised money and whatnot, sure, we could use it to go do like extravagant things or to fund like this big circus tent that we want. But first and foremost, our community funds, if there's somebody who is struggling, who needs a therapist, who is going to be homeless because they're having issues with their lease or something, first and foremost, we do take care of one another. And we will also call meetings if we're all noticing, say, somebody in our group has been having an episode of psychosis. We will call a meeting and do our best to help them in any way that we can. And that is another thing that I think has kept our group really strong, is that we actually have really, really made an effort to care for one another.
Yeah, I think that not only having a tight-knit group that is seriously involved in each other's lives, we have this founding principle called Frith, and it's been from the very beginning, since we've been using this concept, it has kind of been one of the things that we can say keeps our community, in alignment with each other. How is, the community's overall, well-being, and how is the community's overall, like, feeling towards each other? And if that kind of feeling isn't very good, we actually take steps to try and make it better. It's important to our community that everybody in it feels respected, heard, involved, and appreciated. And we have worked really hard to maintain that type of attitude. And like Cloudy said, having that commitment, it's hard, especially to commit to that, to commit to being there for each other, even when it's hard, or to commit to talking out your problems with a group of people who you would just rather write off. You know, it takes commitment, and gosh, yeah,
And
that's a hard one.
Part of that too, I think, is that having a group mindset, not just thinking of yourself as an individual, but as a part of this whole group. I think that's a very important thing that we have that unites us together, is that a lot of us are really thinking about that, Frith, really thinking about the group as a unit, rather than thinking about, oh, what am I contributing? What am I doing? What am I getting out of this? We are thinking about ourselves as a whole. And that's very animistic too. And one little thing I wanted to add also is that even though we do have, these like dedicated members, who take an oath to be kin and are deeply, deeply involved, the periphery people are very important too. The kith, the members who are around, but it's not their whole life. Like, that's such an essential part of what keeps us going, because those people might not be there at every event. They might not like donate a whole lot of money. They might not be able to contribute a whole lot, but they're very, very important, as are our guests. We don't function without kin, and guests. We need all three of those. It can't just be one or the other. If we were just kin, then we would be a closed little group that is separate from the whole world, If we were just kith, then we would be kind of like this like floaty thing that just kind of happens every now and then. So we really do need all three of those elements, and they have been essential for our continuation.
I think one of the things that I wanted to say also was our group utilizes, the baby steps kind of way of getting things done. We don't have the expectation that it's going to be just this grand, huge thing right away. And we understand that it's going to take years to work up to the point where we want to be, and maybe even our entire lifetime. And one of the founding things that we wanted this for was so that members' children and their children's children had a community to draw upon, further into the future than we would ever be. We wanted something that would outlast us and have some kind of permanence. And the way that we get there isn't by leaps and bounds by any means. It's been by taking these tiny, tiny, tiny steps, one little itty bitty step at a time, and not getting disappointed in ourselves when we weren't able to make all of the things happen that we wanted to make happen was a big, it was a big step for a lot of us, and also, helped us keep our focus.
Right. Like, one of our major goals is to buy land. We want to have land on which to host our events, on which to make our mead, all of these things. And that is a big goal that, like you said, River, like, we might not achieve in our lifetimes. And so many of us were raised without the cultural context of animism, paganism, heathenry, and we have seen how it has harmed us to not have those influences growing up. And we want to offer that in the future for people that want it. And it's a long road, and we might not we probably won't achieve all of our goals in this lifetime, but we'll hopefully at least get some land so that we can start this process. Excuse me. We are, like you said, River, we're trying to take little baby steps. Buying land is a huge thing. It's like not something that people easily do in this world that we have right now. And that is a huge goal for us. And we're taking little steps to get to that goal. But that is also a step in the process of the wider goal of building an actual community where people can live off the land, live communally, and go from there.
I also wanted to get this out of the way while it was on my mind. Since you had mentioned about plugs, two of our upcoming large public events that you could find us at, we will be at Missoula Pride Parade on Saturday, June 17th. And we will also be at Kalispell Pagan Pride, which is in September. The official date is still to be announced.
And on the note of events that we'll be at, I'm sure a lot of the listeners are not living in or around Missoula, Montana, but if they still want to attend a Hell's Gate Heathen event, our Hearth Culture groups, which are our study groups, are available on Discord, and you can Discord in to read the myths with us, learn about folklore, that kind of stuff. And all of that is at our website at hellsgateheathen.com and our Facebook group.
Thank you all again. It's been great having you all on and sharing all of your experiences. Is there anything else you would like to add before we jump off?
I don't think so. Thank you for having us, Ryan. This is awesome. We love to brag about our kindred because we're very proud of it.
I agree. Thank you so much for having us. We had a wonderful time, and I hope that we get to speak again soon.
Likewise, it's been great having y'all on and hearing more about all the great work y'all have been doing. So this is Ryan Smith at The Wayward Wanderer, now signing off. If you want to find out more about radical heathen practice, head on over to onblackwings.com, where you can find articles, classes, resources, and more. This podcast was created and produced by Ryan Smith. Thanks for listening.